For 43 years, I poured every ounce of my soul into being the perfect mother. I sacrificed my dreams, my career, my entire identity to make sure my daughter Emma had everything she could ever want. I thought unconditional love meant giving, until there was nothing left of yourself. I was wrong. The day she looked me in the eye and called me too needy for wanting to spend time with my own grandchildren was the day I realized that sometimes the people you love most are the ones who deserve you least. What Emma didn't know was that while she was busy building her perfect life with my money, I had been quietly building something of my own. And when she finally pushed me too far, I made sure she learned exactly what grateful really looks like. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Diana Walsh, and I suppose my story begins the day I held Emma in my arms for the first time. She was born 3 weeks early, so tiny and fragile that I was terrified to breathe too loudly in her presence. My husband James and I had tried for years to have children, going through countless fertility treatments and heartbreaking miscarriages. When Emma finally arrived, she felt like a miracle wrapped in pink blankets. From that moment forward, my entire world revolved around her. James used to joke that I loved Emma more than I loved him, and looking back now, I think he might have been right. Not because I didn't love my husband, but because loving Emma felt like breathing. It was essential, automatic, and all-consuming. When Emma was 6 months old, James was offered a promotion that would require extensive travel. The salary increase was substantial, but it meant he'd be gone at least 3 weeks out of every month. We sat at our kitchen table one evening, Emma sleeping peacefully in her bassinet nearby, and made what felt like a practical decision. I would quit my job as a marketing coordinator at a growing tech company to become a full-time mother. The sacrifice seemed small at the time. After all, what was more important than raising our daughter? I had been passionate about my work. I loved the creativity involved in developing campaigns, the satisfaction of seeing projects come to life, the camaraderie with my colleagues. I had even been in line for a promotion to marketing director. But Emma needed me, or at least that's what I told myself. Looking back, I wonder if I needed her more than she needed me. The early years were a blur of sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes with being responsible for another human being's every need. But they were also filled with first smiles, first words, first steps. I documented everything obsessively, filling photo albums and scrapbooks with every milestone. I wanted Emma to know how treasured she was, how every moment of her life mattered to me. As Emma grew, so did my devotion to her happiness. When she showed interest in ballet at age 4, I enrolled her in the most prestigious dance academy in the city, even though the monthly fees were more than our mortgage payment. When she decided she wanted to learn piano, I bought her a baby grand that took up half our living room. When she expressed interest in horseback riding, I found the most exclusive equestrian center and signed her up for private lessons. James and I had to make adjustments. We stopped going out to dinner, stopped taking vacations, stopped buying anything for ourselves that wasn't absolutely necessary. But seeing Emma's face light up when she mastered a difficult ballet routine or played her first complete piano piece made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. The pattern continued through her elementary and middle school years. Emma wanted to attend the private academy across town, where the children of doctors and lawyers went to school. The tuition was astronomical, but I convinced James that Emma's education was an investment in her future. I took a part-time job working evenings at a local boutique to help cover the costs, which meant I rarely saw James except in passing. Emma thrived at her new school. She made friends with children from wealthy families, attended birthday parties at country clubs, and developed tastes that far exceeded our middle-class budget. When she was invited to a classmate's skiing trip to Aspen, I worked extra shifts. for 2 months to pay for her equipment and spending money. When she wanted to join the school's European art history trip, I sold my grandmother's jewelry collection to cover the expenses. High school brought new challenges and new expenses. Emma had her heart set on attending Princeton University, following in the footsteps of several of her classmates' older siblings. The guidance counselor explained that to be competitive for Ivy League admission, Emma would need to distinguish herself through extracurricular activities and academic achievements. I threw myself into researching the best SAT prep courses, the most impressive summer programs, the volunteer opportunities that would look best on college applications. I hired private tutors for subjects where Emma struggled, enrolled her in leadership camps during summers, and even convinced James to let her spend a semester studying abroad in France to demonstrate her global awareness. The financial strain was becoming unbearable. James was working longer hours to compensate for our increased expenses, and I had taken on a second part-time job doing freelance marketing work from home. We had refinanced our house twice and accumulated significant credit card debt. But Emma was thriving, and her happiness felt worth any price. During her junior year, Emma announced that she wanted to major in international business and eventually get her MBA. She had researched the best programs and determined that after Princeton, she would need to attend either Harvard or Stanford for graduate school. The total cost for her education would be close to $500,000, not including living expenses. I remember the night James and I sat down to figure out how we could possibly afford Emma's dreams. Our savings were depleted, our credit was stretched to the limit, and we were both working ourselves to exhaustion. But as I looked at Emma's college vision board, covered with images of ivy-covered buildings and graduation ceremonies, I knew we would find a way. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I started a small consulting business, leveraging the marketing skills I had developed years earlier. I worked late into the night after Emma went to bed, building client relationships, and developing strategies for small businesses. What started as a desperate attempt to fund my daughter's education slowly began to grow into something more substantial. My first major client was a local restaurant chain that needed help with their digital marketing strategy. The owner, Mrs. Chen, was impressed with my work and referred me to other business owners in her network. Within a year, I had built a steady client base and was earning more from my consulting work than I had ever made in my previous corporate job. But I didn't tell Emma about my business success. I wanted her to focus on her studies without worrying about money. I continued to present our family's financial situation as tight, requiring careful budgeting and occasional sacrifices. I thought I was protecting her from stress, teaching her the value of hard work and frugality. Emma was accepted to Princeton, with a partial scholarship, which helped significantly with costs. I was so proud the day her acceptance letter arrived. We celebrated with dinner at her favorite restaurant, and I watched her face glow with excitement as she talked about her future plans. All the sacrifices, all the late nights working, all the financial stress felt worth it in that moment. College brought new expenses, of course. Emma needed a laptop, designer clothes to fit in with her wealthy classmates, money for social activities, and spring break trips. She called home regularly, usually when she needed additional funds for something important. I never said no. How could I, when she was working so hard to build the successful future we had always dreamed of for her? During her sophomore year, Emma met Bradley, a young man from a prominent Boston family whose father owned a chain of luxury hotels. Bradley was charming, well-educated, and clearly from the kind of wealthy background that could provide Emma with the life of comfort and security I had always wanted for her. I encouraged their relationship, even when it meant Emma spent most of her school breaks visiting Bradley's family instead of coming home. My consulting business continued to grow during Emma's college years. I had expanded my client base to include several major corporations and had even hired 2 part-time employees to help manage the workload. The financial pressure that had once felt crushing began to ease, and for the first time in years, James and I could breathe a little easier. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But I still didn't share the details of my business success with Emma. She was so focused on her studies and her relationship with Bradley that I didn't want to distract her with family finances. I told myself I was being considerate, allowing her to concentrate on building her own future without worrying about ours. Emma graduated from Princeton summa cum laude and was accepted to Harvard Business School. Bradley proposed during their graduation celebration, presenting her with a ring that probably cost more than James made in 6 months. The wedding was planned for the summer between her first and second year of business school, and Emma had her heart set on a celebration that would match Bradley's family's expectations. Planning Emma's wedding became my full-time job for nearly 8 months. She wanted everything to be perfect, from the venue to the flowers to the 10-course reception dinner. The costs quickly spiraled beyond anything James and I had anticipated, but I couldn't bear to disappoint her on what was supposed to be the most important day of her life. I took out a business loan using my consulting company as collateral to cover the wedding expenses. Emma never knew about the financial gymnastics required to make her dream wedding a reality. On her wedding day, as I watched her dance with Bradley, in her custom-designed gown, surrounded by 300 guests in the ballroom of Boston's most exclusive hotel, I felt a deep satisfaction. Every sacrifice had led to this moment of pure happiness for my daughter. After the wedding, Emma and Bradley settled into a beautiful brownstone in Cambridge that Bradley's parents had purchased as a wedding gift. Emma finished her MBA while pregnant with their first child, my granddaughter Sophie. I was overjoyed when Emma asked me to come stay with them for the first month after Sophie was born to help with the adjustment. Those 4 weeks caring for my granddaughter were some of the happiest of my life. Sophie was a calm, beautiful baby who rarely cried and seemed to find comfort in my arms. I took care of the night feeding so Emma could rest, prepared nutritious meals to help her recover from childbirth, and handled the household tasks that felt overwhelming to new parents. When it was time for me to return home, Emma hugged me tightly and said, "Mom, I don't know what I would have done without you. You're the best grandmother Sophie could ask for." I treasured those words, replaying them in my mind during the long drive back to my empty house. 2 years later, Emma had their second child, a son they named Oliver. Again, I was invited to stay and help during the newborn phase. I gladly rearranged my work schedule and spent another month in Cambridge, caring for both children while Emma recovered. Bradley traveled frequently for work, so I often felt like I was Emma's primary support system during those early parenting days. My consulting business had grown substantially by this point. I had developed specialized expertise in digital marketing for luxury brands and had attracted several high-profile clients. The company was generating significant revenue, far more than I needed for my modest lifestyle. James and I had paid off our house, eliminated our credit card debt, and built up a substantial savings account. But I maintained the same frugal habits that had carried us through Emma's expensive childhood and college years. I drove the same 10-year-old sedan, shopped at discount stores, and continued to present our family's financial situation as comfortable but not wealthy. I told myself I was being prudent, saving money for Emma's future needs and ensuring financial security for James and my retirement years. The truth was, I had grown accustomed to being needed. The financial sacrifices I had made for Emma had given my life purpose and meaning. Being the mother who could solve any problem, provide any resource, meet any need had become my identity. I didn't know who I was if I wasn't essential to Emma's happiness. Emma and Bradley's lives continued to evolve in ways that required ongoing support. When Sophie started preschool at an exclusive private academy, Emma confided that the tuition was stretching their budget despite Bradley's successful career. I quietly arranged to cover the costs, telling Emma that James had received an unexpected bonus that we wanted to use for our granddaughter's education. When they decided to renovate their brownstone to add a home office and expanded master suite, I provided what I called a family loan to cover the construction costs. When Bradley's hotel business faced challenges during an economic downturn, I helped them maintain their lifestyle by contributing to household expenses while presenting it as gifts rather than financial assistance. I told myself I was investing in my family's happiness and stability. Seeing Emma's children grow up in comfort and security, watching her maintain her position in Boston's social circles, knowing that she never had to worry about money the way I had worried for so many years felt like the fulfillment of every dream I had harbored as a young mother. But somewhere along the way, the dynamic between Emma and me began to shift in ways I didn't immediately recognize. The grateful daughter who had once called me her hero started to take my support for granted. The weekly phone calls became monthly check-ins. The invitations to visit became less frequent and more conditional on whether my help was needed. The first time I felt the change acutely was during Sophie's 5th birthday party. I had driven to Cambridge with a car full of presents and had planned to stay for the weekend to help with cleanup and spend time with the children. But when I arrived, Emma seemed distracted and stressed. "Mom, I'm sorry, but this weekend isn't going to work for a visit," she said as I was unloading gifts from my car. "Bradley's parents are coming tomorrow and we need to prepare the house. Maybe next time you could call ahead instead of just showing up?" I stood in their driveway, arms full of wrapped presents, feeling like an unwelcome stranger. When had I become someone who needed permission to visit my own daughter? When had my presence become an inconvenience rather than a joy? But I swallowed my hurt feelings and drove home that same evening, telling myself that Emma was just stressed with party preparations and didn't mean to sound dismissive. I convinced myself that her reaction was understandable, that I should have been more considerate about timing my visit. The pattern continued over the following months. When I called to chat, Emma often sounded rushed and distracted. When I suggested visits, there always seemed to be scheduling conflicts or other obligations. When I offered to help with various projects or challenges, Emma's responses became more perfunctory, less enthusiastic. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells, carefully timing my communications and offers of assistance to avoid seeming intrusive. The relationship that had once felt natural and easy began to require careful navigation. I found myself overthinking every interaction, analyzing Emma's tone for signs of annoyance or impatience. The breaking point came 6 months ago, on what should have been a joyful occasion. Emma had invited me to Cambridge for Oliver's 3rd birthday celebration. I was excited to spend time with my grandchildren and had prepared special gifts for Oliver, including a custom-made wooden train set that had taken a local craftsman weeks to complete. When I arrived, the house was bustling with activity. Bradley's parents were there, along with several of Emma and Bradley's friends and their children. I felt slightly out of place among the well-dressed crowd, but I was happy to be included in the celebration. During the party, I noticed that Sophie seemed to be struggling with some of the other children. She had always been a sensitive child, and the chaos of the party seemed to be overwhelming her. I approached her quietly and suggested we go to her room to read a story until she felt ready to rejoin the party. Emma appeared at the bedroom door as I was finishing the 2nd book. "Mom, what are you doing? Sophie needs to be with the other children, not hiding up here." She was feeling overwhelmed, I explained. I thought a quiet break might help her recharge. Emma's expression tightened. "Mom, you can't just remove my daughter from her own brother's party because you think she needs a break. I'm her mother. I know what she needs." The sharpness in her tone caught me off guard. "I was just trying to help." She seemed upset. "That's the problem, Mom. You're always trying to help, always trying to manage situations that don't need managing. Sophie needs to learn to handle social situations, not escape from them every time things get challenging." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was overstepping." Emma sighed heavily. "Look, I know you mean well, but sometimes your helping feels more like interference. Sophie and Oliver need to develop independence, and they can't do that if Grandma is always swooping in to rescue them. The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I spent the rest of the party feeling self-conscious about every interaction with my grandchildren, second-guessing every instinct to comfort or assist. When it was time to leave, Emma's goodbye hug felt perfunctory, obligatory. During the drive home, I replayed the conversation over and over, trying to understand how my attempt to comfort an overwhelmed child had been interpreted as interference. When had my maternal instincts become unwelcome? When had my desire to help my family become a problem to be managed? Over the following weeks, I found myself hesitating before calling Emma, wondering if my check-ins were becoming burdensome. I second-guessed every offer of assistance, every suggestion, every expression of interest in their lives. The natural, easy relationship I had enjoyed with my daughter felt like it was slipping away, replaced by a careful dance of trying not to seem too involved or too needy. But the phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday evening in early fall. I had been working late in my home office, finalizing a marketing strategy for a new client, when my phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the screen, and I answered, eagerly, hoping to hear about the children's latest adventures or upcoming family plans. Instead, Emma's voice carried a tone I had never heard before. Cold, measured, and utterly final. "Mom, we need to talk." Those 4 words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. I could hear the sounds of Bradley putting the children to bed in the background, their innocent laughter a stark contrast to the gravity in Emma's voice. I set down my pen and closed my laptop, giving her my full attention despite the knot of dread forming in my stomach. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" The pause that followed felt eternal. When Emma finally spoke, her words came out in a rush, as if she had been rehearsing them. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about our relationship lately, and I think we need to establish some boundaries. You've been becoming increasingly dependent on us for your emotional needs, and it's not healthy for any of us." I blinked, certain I had misheard her. "I'm sorry. What do you mean by dependent?" "Mom, you call me almost every day. You show up without advance notice. You insert yourself into situations with the kids that don't require your intervention. You seem to need constant validation that you're needed and wanted, and honestly, it's becoming exhausting." Each word felt like a physical blow. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "Emma, I call because I love you and want to stay connected to your life. I visit because I want to spend time with my grandchildren. I help because that's what mothers do. But that's just it, Mom. I don't need mothering anymore. I'm 31 years old with 2 children of my own. I need space to be an adult, to make my own decisions, to parent my children without feeling like I'm being supervised or judged." The unfairness of her accusation hit me like a slap. When have I ever judged your parenting? Everything I do is to support you, to make your life easier. Supporting me would mean respecting my autonomy. Instead, you seem to need us to need you, and when we don't, you become hurt and resentful. That's not support, Mom. That's emotional dependency. I stood up from my desk chair, pacing to the window that overlooked the garden I had carefully maintained for 20 years. The roses I had planted when Emma was in high school were blooming beautifully, their vibrant colors mocking the darkness that was settling over my heart. "I don't understand where this is coming from, Emma. Last month you thanked me for helping with Sophie's school project. You seemed grateful when I arranged for Oliver's swimming lessons. And that's exactly the problem. You arrange things without being asked. You solve problems that aren't problems. You create situations where we feel obligated to be grateful instead of just letting us live our lives." The accusation was so far from my intentions that I struggled to process it. Every action I had taken, every sacrifice I had made, every moment of support I had provided had been motivated by pure love. How had that love been twisted into something selfish and manipulative? "Emma, Everything I've done has been because I love you and want what's best for your family. If I've overstepped, I apologize, but please don't characterize my love as dependency. Mom, when you love someone, you want them to be independent and confident in their own abilities. You don't create a dynamic where they feel like they can't make decisions without your input or handle challenges without your assistance. I thought about all the times I had quietly solved problems for Emma without her even knowing. The tuition payments I had made, the household expenses I had covered, the opportunities I had created through my professional connections. Had all of that been wrong? Had my desire to smooth her path been somehow harmful? I've never wanted you to feel incapable, sweetheart. I've just wanted to help make your life easier. But don't you see? By constantly helping, you're sending the message that you don't think I can handle my own life. And when I try to establish independence, you seem to take it as personal rejection. The conversation was spiraling in a direction I had never anticipated. I had called expecting to hear about Sophie's latest artwork or Oliver's new words. Instead, I was being told that my fundamental approach to loving my daughter was flawed and harmful. What are you asking of me, Emma? Do you want me to stop calling? Stop visiting? Stop caring about what happens to you and the children? I'm asking you to develop your own life, your own interests, your own sources of fulfillment that don't revolve around managing our lives. I'm asking you to trust that Bradley and I are capable adults who can handle our responsibilities without constant oversight. The irony was staggering. While Emma was accusing me of being emotionally dependent, I had been quietly building a business empire that she knew nothing about. While she questioned my ability to have my own life, I had been developing expertise and professional relationships that extended far beyond my role as her mother. I do have my own life, Emma. I have my work, my friends, my interests. But you and the children are also important parts of my life, and I won't apologize for wanting to be involved. Involved is one thing, Mom, but what you're doing goes beyond involvement. It's more like emotional neediness. You seem to require constant contact and constant reassurance that you're essential to our happiness. The word neediness hit me like a physical blow. I had been called many things in my life, but needy had never been one of them. I was the person everyone turned to when they needed help, the problem solver, the reliable one who could be counted on in any crisis. I think you're being unfair, Emma. And frankly, I think you're being ungrateful for everything I've done to support your family over the years. The silence that followed was deafening. When Emma spoke again, her voice was ice cold. And there it is, the guilt trip, the reminder of all your sacrifices. Mom, do you realize how manipulative that sounds? You can't give freely and then use your generosity as leverage when someone sets boundaries. I felt the world tilting beneath my feet. The daughter I had devoted my life to raising was not only rejecting my love, but twisting it into something ugly and selfish. The woman I had sacrificed everything for was now telling me that my sacrifices were weapons I wielded against her. I'm not trying to manipulate you, Emma. I'm simply pointing out that our relationship has been built on mutual love and support. If you want to change the fundamental nature of that relationship, I think it's fair to acknowledge what we're giving up. What we're giving up is an unhealthy dynamic where I feel guilty for living my own life, because I know you'll interpret any independence as rejection. What we're gaining is the possibility of a relationship between equals rather than one between. A mother who can't let go and a daughter who feels suffocated. The accusation of being unable to let go stung particularly deeply because it felt so unfair. I had supported Emma's independence at every stage of her life. I had encouraged her to attend college across the country, to pursue her own career, to marry the man she loved, to make her own decisions about parenting. How had that support been reframed as controlling behavior? I've always encouraged your independence, Emma. I supported your decision to go to Princeton even though it meant seeing you less. I welcomed Bradley into our family even though it meant sharing your time and attention. I've celebrated every milestone and achievement in your life. Yes, but you've also made it clear that my choices needed your approval and support to be valid. You've created a situation where I feel like I owe you for every opportunity I've had because you've reminded me repeatedly of the sacrifices you made to provide them. This conversation was revealing a perspective on our relationship that I had never considered. In my mind, I had been the loving mother who gave everything to ensure her daughter's success and happiness. In Emma's mind, apparently, I had been the controlling mother who used her sacrifices to maintain influence over her daughter's life. I never meant to make you feel like you owed me anything, Emma. Everything I did was because I wanted to do it, because your happiness mattered more to me than anything else. But don't you see the problem with that? When someone's happiness matters more to you than your own, it creates an impossible burden for them. I can never be happy enough to justify all your sacrifices. I can never be grateful enough to repay all your generosity. It's an equation that can never balance. I sank back into my desk chair, overwhelmed by the weight of Emma's words. Had I really created such an impossible situation? Had my love become a burden rather than a gift? So what are you suggesting we do? How do we move forward from here? I think we need to take a break from our current pattern of interaction. I need space to establish my own identity as a mother and as an adult without feeling like I'm being evaluated or guided. I need to know that I can handle challenges on my own without someone rushing in to fix things for me. The word break sent panic through my chest. What kind of break are you talking about? I think we should limit our communication to once a week, on Sundays. I think visits should be planned in advance and limited to once a month. I think you should step back from offering advice or assistance unless specifically asked. Each boundary felt like a door slamming shut. The relationship that had been the center of my world for 31 years was being systematically dismantled in the name of Emma's emotional health. And what about the children? Are you planning to limit my relationship with Sophie and Oliver as well? The children need to develop their own relationship with you that isn't mediated through me. But they also need to learn that Grandma isn't the solution to every problem or the source of every treat. They need to understand that their parents are their primary source of security and guidance. I thought about Sophie's sweet face when I read her bedtime stories, about Oliver's delighted laughter when I pushed him on the swing in their backyard. Was Emma really suggesting that those relationships were somehow harmful to her children? Emma, those children are my grandchildren. They're part of my family, part of my heart. I won't apologize for loving them or wanting to be involved in their lives. I'm not asking you to apologize for loving them. I'm asking you to love them in a way that supports their development rather than creating dependency. They need to learn to find comfort and security in their own family unit, not to rely on Grandma as their primary source of emotional support. The conversation had become surreal. Everything that I thought defined good grandparenting was being redefined as harmful interference. Every instinct I had about how to love my family was being questioned and rejected. I think you're making a mistake, Emma. Family relationships aren't supposed to be limited by arbitrary boundaries and restrictions. Love isn't supposed to be rationed and controlled. But love also isn't supposed to be overwhelming and suffocating. Love should enhance people's lives, not make them feel guilty for wanting independence. We had reached an impasse. Emma saw my love as controlling and overwhelming. I saw her boundaries as cruel and unnecessary. Neither of us seemed capable of understanding the other's perspective. Is this really what you want, Emma? To reduce our relationship to scheduled phone calls and monthly visits? To treat me like an acquaintance rather than your mother? I want a relationship where I don't feel guilty for living my own life. I want to be able to make decisions without worrying about how they'll affect your feelings. I want to parent my children without feeling like I'm being supervised. I want to love you without feeling suffocated by your need to be essential to my happiness. The finality in her voice told me that this wasn't a negotiation. These weren't suggestions up for discussion. Emma had made a unilateral decision about the future of our relationship, and my feelings about that decision were irrelevant. I think you're being incredibly unfair, Emma, but if this is what you think you need, I won't fight you on it. I love you too much to force my presence where it's not wanted. Thank you, Mom. I think this will be better for all of us in the long run. After we hung up, I sat in my office staring at the phone for a long time. The house felt unnaturally quiet, as if the silence itself was judging me. I replayed the conversation over and over, trying to understand how my attempts to be a loving mother and grandmother had been so thoroughly misinterpreted. But as the initial shock began to wear off, anger started to take its place. The more I thought about Emma's accusations, the more unfair they seemed. I had given her everything she had ever wanted, supported every dream, solved every problem, provided every opportunity. And now she was telling me that my generosity had been selfish, my love had been controlling, my presence had been suffocating. The irony was almost laughable. While Emma was accusing me of emotional dependency, she had been financially dependent on me for years without even knowing it. While she was questioning my ability to have my own life, I had been building a successful business that generated more income than her husband's prestigious career, while she was treating me like a lonely, desperate mother with nothing else to live for. I had been quietly accumulating the resources that could change all of our lives. For 3 days after that phone call, I honored Emma's request for space. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't reach out in any way. I threw myself into my work, taking on new clients and developing innovative marketing strategies that impressed even my most demanding customers. The business world appreciated my skills and expertise in ways that my family apparently did not. But on Friday evening, as I was reviewing contracts for a potential new client, my phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the screen, and despite everything, that had happened. My heart leaped with hope. Maybe she had reconsidered. Maybe she had realized how harsh her words had been. Instead, Emma's voice carried a tone of barely controlled frustration. Mom, I just got a call from Sophie's school. Apparently, you contacted them directly to arrange for her art projects to be displayed in some kind of professional gallery exhibition. Did you really think it was appropriate to go behind my back and make arrangements for my daughter without consulting me? I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I had indeed used my professional connections to arrange for Sophie's artwork, to be featured in a children's art showcase that several of my clients were sponsoring. I had thought Emma would be pleased that Sophie's talents were being recognized. I thought you would be happy that Sophie's artwork was being acknowledged. The exhibition is a wonderful opportunity for children to see their creative work displayed professionally. That's not the point, Mom. The point is that you made arrangements regarding my child without my permission. This is exactly the kind of overstepping I was talking about. The accusation stung, particularly because my intentions had been purely to create a positive experience for my granddaughter. I was trying to do something nice for Sophie. I thought you would appreciate the opportunity. I might have appreciated the opportunity if you had asked me first, but you didn't ask. You assumed. You went around me to arrange something for my child, and then you probably expected me to be grateful for your initiative. The conversation was following the same pattern as our previous discussion, with Emma casting my attempts to help as violations of her autonomy. I was beginning to see that no matter what I did, if it hadn't been specifically requested, it would be interpreted as interference. I'll call the gallery and withdraw Sophie's artwork from the exhibition. It's too late for that. The promotional materials have already been printed. But this is exactly what I meant about boundaries, Mom. You can't keep inserting yourself into our lives and then acting hurt when we object to your interference. After Emma hung up, I sat staring at my phone with a mixture of hurt and anger. The gallery exhibition had been arranged through contacts I had cultivated through years of professional networking. The opportunity was genuinely valuable and would have provided Sophie with a wonderful experience. But instead of appreciation, I was receiving criticism for not following proper protocols. That weekend, I made a decision that would change everything. I drove to the office of my attorney, Patricia Morrison, who had been handling my business legal needs for several years. Patricia was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had built a successful practice representing entrepreneurs and small business owners. "Diana, good to see you. What brings you in on a Saturday?" I settled into the chair across from her desk and took a deep breath. "Patricia, I need to make some changes to my estate planning documents. Significant changes." Patricia pulled out a legal pad and pen. "What kind of changes are we talking about?" "I want to remove my daughter Emma as the primary beneficiary of my estate. I want to establish a charitable foundation instead, with very specific guidelines about how the funds should be used." Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly. "Diana, this is a major decision. Your estate has grown substantially over the past few years. We're talking about several $1,000,000. Are you sure you want to make such a dramatic change?" The number Patricia mentioned would have shocked Emma, who still believed her mother was living modestly on consulting income. The truth was that my business had expanded far beyond what I had ever imagined possible. Through strategic partnerships and innovative marketing approaches, I had built a company that was now worth more than $8 million. I'm absolutely sure I've spent 30 years pouring everything I had into supporting my daughter's life and dreams. I've been told that my love is suffocating, my help is interference, and my presence is unwelcome. If that's how she feels about my contributions to her life, then I think my resources would be better used helping people who would actually appreciate them. Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying my face. "Diana, family conflicts can be emotional and complicated. Are you sure you want to make permanent legal changes based on what might be a temporary disagreement?" I thought about Emma's cold, clinical tone when she had described me as emotionally needy. I thought about her systematic dismantling of our relationship in the name of her independence. I thought about her accusation that I was manipulative and controlling. "This isn't a temporary disagreement, Patricia. This is my daughter telling me that everything I thought was love and support has actually been harmful and selfish. If she wants independence from my emotional neediness, then she can have independence from my financial support as well." Patricia nodded slowly. "All right. Let's talk about how you want to structure this foundation. What causes are important to you?" "I want to focus on supporting single mothers who are working to build better lives for their children. Women who are struggling financially but are determined to provide opportunities for their kids. Women who would be grateful for help rather than resentful of it." Over the next 2 hours, Patricia and I outlined the structure for the Diana Walsh Foundation. The organization would provide scholarships, business loans, and direct financial assistance to single mothers who demonstrated both need and determination. The foundation would also fund programs that helped women develop professional skills and build career paths that could support their families. "I want the foundation to be fully funded immediately," I told Patricia. "I want to transfer the majority of my assets while I'm alive so I can see the impact of the work." Patricia made notes as we talked. "This is very generous, Diana, but I have to ask, what about your own financial security? You're only 58 years old. You need to ensure that you have adequate resources for your own retirement and potential healthcare needs." "I'll keep enough to maintain my current lifestyle and cover any future needs, but the bulk of my assets should go to helping people who will actually appreciate the assistance." As we finalized the legal framework for the foundation, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose that I hadn't experienced in months. For years, I had poured my resources into supporting Emma's life while keeping my success hidden. Now, I would pour those same resources into supporting women who wouldn't question my motives or resent my generosity. The following week, I began the process of transferring assets to the foundation. I also made another decision that felt equally important. I would tell Emma about the foundation and about the financial support she had been receiving without knowing it. If she wanted transparency and honesty in our relationship, she would get both. But I wouldn't just tell her. I would show her exactly what her independence was going to cost her. And I would make sure she understood that appreciation and gratitude weren't emotional neediness, they were basic human decency. The phone call I made to Emma 3 weeks later would change everything between us. But this time, I would be the one setting the boundaries. I scheduled the call for Tuesday afternoon, deliberately choosing a time when I knew Emma would be home from her yoga class but before the children returned from school. I wanted her full attention for what I was about to reveal. As I dialed her number, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The anger that had consumed me for weeks had crystallized into something much more powerful. Absolute clarity about what needed to be said. "Hi, Mom," Emma answered, her tone cautiously polite. "How are you doing?" "I'm doing very well, actually. Better than I've felt in years. I'm calling because I have something important to share with you, and I think it's time for complete honesty between us." There was a pause. "Okay, what's going on?" "Emma, over the past month you've made it very clear that you see me as emotionally needy, overly involved, and unable to respect your independence. You've characterized my love and support as manipulation and control. I've given your words a lot of thought, and I think you deserve to understand exactly what kind of relationship we've actually had all these years." "Mom, I hope you're not calling to rehash our previous conversations. I thought we agreed on new boundaries." "We did, and I'm going to honor those boundaries completely. But first, there are some things you need to know about the life you've been living and the support you've been receiving." I could hear Emma shifting in her chair, perhaps sensing that this conversation was going to be different from our previous discussions. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that for the past 15 years, you've been living a lifestyle that's been subsidized by my income in ways you've never realized. I'm talking about the fact that while you've been building your independent life, I've been quietly covering expenses and creating opportunities that you've attributed to your own success or Bradley's family connections." The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had been disconnected. "Emma, are you there?" "I'm here. I don't understand what you're saying." "Let me be very specific. Sophie's preschool tuition at Brightwood Academy? I've been paying that for 3 years. The renovation costs for your brownstone that you thought came from Bradley's bonus. That was a loan from me that I never expected to be repaid. The family vacation to Europe last summer that you thought was a gift from Bradley's parents. I arranged and funded that trip through my business connections." Each revelation hung in the air like a bomb detonating. I could hear Emma's breathing becoming shallower. That's not possible. Bradley has been handling our finances. He would have told me if we were receiving outside support. Bradley knows about some of it. The tuition payments go directly to the school from my business account. The renovation funding went through a financial services company I work with to make it look like a standard loan approval. The vacation was arranged through a corporate travel program that made it appear to be an employee benefit from his hotel company. Why would you do that? Why would you hide financial support from me? The question revealed so much about how little Emma understood my motivations. Because every time I offered direct help, you found reasons to decline it. You wanted to maintain your independence, to feel like you were building your life through your own efforts. I thought I was giving you the gift of that feeling while still ensuring you had the support you needed. But that's deceptive. You've been manipulating our financial situation without our knowledge. I felt a familiar flash of anger at her choice of words, but I kept my voice steady. I've been supporting my daughter's family because I love them and because I had the resources to help. I was trying to respect your desire for independence while still being able to contribute to your well-being. How much, Mom? How much money are we talking about? Over the past 5 years, approximately $400,000 in direct support. That doesn't include the business opportunities I've created for Bradley through my professional network or the connections I've facilitated that have advanced his career. The number clearly shocked her into silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. $400,000. Emma, the consulting business I've been running isn't just a small side project. I've built a company that generates over $2 million in annual revenue. I have 43 employees across 6 offices. I own commercial real estate in 3 states. My personal net worth is approximately $8.7 million. I heard what sounded like a sharp intake of breath, followed by a long pause. $8 million. The modest lifestyle you think I live is a choice, not a necessity. I drive a 10-year-old car because I like it, not because I can't afford better. I shop at discount stores because I find it satisfying, not because I'm struggling financially. I've maintained the appearance of living modestly because I thought it helped our family dynamic, but apparently I was wrong about that. Emma's voice, when it came, sounded hollow. I had no idea. Why didn't you ever tell me about your success? Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I have. Because I wanted our relationship to be based on genuine affection rather than financial dependence. Because I thought being humble about my success was more important than being recognized for it. But Mom, this changes everything. If you have that kind of money, why have I been what, Emma? Acting like someone who loves her family and wants to support them? Why have I been trying to make your life easier when I have the resources to do so? I was going to say, why have you been so involved in our day-to-day lives when you clearly have your own successful career and interests? The question revealed the fundamental misunderstanding that had been driving our conflict. Because having financial success doesn't diminish my love for my family. Because being professionally accomplished doesn't mean I stop caring about my daughter and grandchildren. Because wealth doesn't replace the joy I get from reading bedtime stories to Sophie or teaching Oliver to ride a bike. I understand that, but do you, Emma? Because your entire argument has been that my desire to be involved in your lives stems from some kind of emotional neediness or lack of purpose in my own life. But I've had tremendous purpose and success in my professional life. My involvement with your family has always been motivated by love, not by psychological deficiency. Another long pause. I could almost hear Emma's worldview shifting as she processed what I was telling her. So when you offered to help with things, when you wanted to spend time with us, when you gave advice or arranged opportunities, that was all coming from a position of strength, not neediness. Exactly. I wasn't a lonely, empty-nest mother desperately clinging to her adult daughter for purpose and meaning. I was a successful businesswoman who happened to love her family deeply and wanted to use her resources and connections to enhance their lives. But why keep it secret? Why not just tell us about your success? Because I've seen what money does to family relationships. I've watched families torn apart by expectations and entitlement and resentment. I wanted you to love me as your mother, not see me as your financial resource. I wanted to support you without creating dependency or obligation. Emma was quiet for so long that I began to wonder if she was still processing or if she had simply disconnected from the conversation, emotionally. Emma, there's something else you need to know. What else could there possibly be? I've made some changes to my estate planning. Given your feelings about my involvement in your life and your characterization of my support as manipulation, I've decided to redirect my assets to people who would appreciate them more. What do you mean? I've established the Diana Walsh Foundation, which will provide financial assistance and business support to single mothers who are working to build better lives for their children. The foundation is being funded with the majority of my estate. The silence that followed was different from the previous pauses. This one felt sharp, almost dangerous. You're giving away your money to strangers instead of leaving it to your family? I'm giving my money to people who won't interpret my generosity as emotional manipulation. I'm supporting women who will be grateful for assistance rather than resentful of it. Mom, you can't be serious. That money, that's Sophie and Oliver's inheritance. That's their college fund, their future security. The irony of her response was breathtaking. Interesting how quickly your perspective on my money changes when you realize it might not be available to you. A few weeks ago, my financial support was unwelcome manipulation. Now it's Sophie and Oliver's birthright. That's not fair. Of course I care about my children's financial future. Every parent does. And every parent has the right to decide how their assets are distributed. You've made it very clear that you want independence from my support and involvement. This is what independence looks like. But I never said I didn't want you to leave money to the children. I just wanted boundaries around how you expressed your love while you're alive. Emma, you can't compartmentalize love and support the way you're trying to do. You can't tell me that my desire to be involved in your daily lives is unhealthy neediness while simultaneously expecting me to provide financial security for your future. Either I'm a loving mother whose support is welcome, or I'm an intrusive presence whose contributions are unwelcome. You don't get to have it both ways. I could hear her crying now, soft sobs that she was trying to suppress. Mom, I never meant. I never wanted to hurt you or make you feel unappreciated. I just felt overwhelmed sometimes. I understand that you felt overwhelmed. But your solution wasn't to communicate about finding a better balance. Your solution was to pathologize my love and characterize my support as psychological dysfunction. You didn't ask me to adjust my approach. You asked me to fundamentally change who I am as a mother and grandmother. I made a mistake. I can see that now. But please don't punish my children for my poor communication. I'm not punishing anyone, Emma. I'm redirecting my resources toward people who will benefit from them without viewing them as burdens or obligations. The foundation will help dozens of families achieve the kind of success and security that your family has enjoyed. What about us? What about our future? What about it? You're both college-educated professionals with successful careers. Bradley's family has substantial wealth. You live in a beautiful home in an excellent neighborhood. Your children attend outstanding schools. You have everything you need to live independently, which is what you said you wanted. But we've been counting on... we assumed that eventually. You assumed that despite wanting independence from my emotional support, you would still be entitled to my financial support. You assumed that you could reject my involvement in your lives while still claiming my assets for your future. The conversation had reached the heart of the matter. Emma wanted the benefits of having a wealthy mother without the relationship that came with it. She wanted financial security without emotional obligation. She wanted inheritance without involvement. That's not what I meant, Mom. I love you. I want you in our lives. I just wanted some space to breathe. Space to breathe is one thing, Emma. Calling me emotionally needy and characterizing my love as manipulation is something else entirely. You didn't ask for space. You attacked the fundamental nature of our relationship. I was frustrated and I said things I didn't mean. Did you? Because you seemed very clear about your feelings. You seem to have given the matter considerable thought before presenting me with your list of boundaries and restrictions. Emma was crying harder now. What can I do to fix this? How can we go back to the way things were? We can't go back. Emma, you've shown me how you really view our relationship, and I've shown you the reality of what that relationship has actually entailed. We both have new information now. But the foundation. You could change your mind about the foundation, right? You could still leave money to the children? Why would I do that? You've established that you don't want my involvement in your family's daily life. Why would you want my involvement in their financial future? Because I was wrong, Mom. I can see that now. I was ungrateful and hurtful, and I'm sorry. I appreciate your apology, Emma, but apologies don't change the fundamental issue. You saw my love as a burden rather than a gift. You saw my support as control rather than care. Those aren't misunderstandings that can be corrected with better communication. They're differences in how we view family relationships. So that's it? You're just going to cut us off financially and emotionally? I'm going to honor the boundaries you established. You wanted less frequent contact, planned visits, and no unsolicited assistance. You'll have all of that. And the money? The money will go to people who understand the difference between generosity and manipulation. It will support families who view assistance as a blessing rather than a burden. Mom, please. I know I hurt you, but please don't let my mistakes affect Sophie and Oliver's future. Sophie and Oliver will have wonderful futures. They have loving parents who are capable of providing for them. They have grandparents on both sides who care about them. They have educational opportunities and social advantages that most children never receive. They'll be fine. But they could have so much more. More isn't always better, Emma. Sometimes more creates entitlement and dependence. Sometimes more prevents people from developing their own capabilities and resilience. Maybe Sophie and Oliver will be stronger for having built their own success, rather than inheriting it. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Emma alternating between apologies and arguments, between acceptance and bargaining. But my decision was final. The foundation papers had been signed. The asset transfers were already in progress. The money that might have secured her children's future was now committed to helping other children whose mothers would never question the motives behind that help. When we finally hung up, I felt a profound sense of peace. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't second-guessing my actions or analyzing my motivations. I had been honest about who I was and what I had to offer. Emma had been honest about how she viewed that offering. Now we both had to live with the consequences of that honesty. Over the following days, Emma tried several more times to reopen the conversation. She sent long text messages explaining her perspective and asking for forgiveness. She had Bradley call to discuss the financial implications for their children. She even enlisted James to try to mediate our conflict. But I had moved beyond anger into something more powerful: clarity. I now understood that Emma and I had fundamentally different views about family relationships, generosity, and love. She saw my involvement as intrusion and my support as manipulation. I saw her boundaries as rejection and her criticism as ingratitude. Neither of us was entirely wrong, but we were incompatible. The Diana Walsh Foundation officially launched 6 weeks later with an initial endowment of $7 million. The first recipients were 12 single mothers from across the state who had applied for business development grants. Each woman received $50,000 in funding, along with mentorship and professional development support. I attended the foundation's inaugural event at a hotel in downtown Boston, watching as these women shared their stories and their dreams. Maria was a former teacher who wanted to start a tutoring center for at-risk children. Jennifer was a nurse who planned to open a community health clinic in an underserved neighborhood. Sarah was a technology professional who had developed an app to help working mothers find reliable childcare. Each woman spoke with gratitude and determination. Each story reminded me why I had started this foundation and why it mattered more than preserving inheritance for grandchildren who might never appreciate it. After the event, one of the recipients approached me privately. Carmen was a young mother who had escaped an abusive relationship and was working to build a catering business that could support her 3 children. Mrs. Walsh, I want you to know that this grant isn't just money to me. It's hope. It's someone believing in my ability to create a better life for my kids. I promise you won't regret investing in us. Standing in that hotel ballroom, surrounded by women who understood the value of support and opportunity, I felt more fulfilled than I had in years. These women would use my money to build businesses, create jobs, and provide security for their families. They would teach their children about gratitude and hard work and the importance of helping others. Emma called again the following week, but this time her tone was different. Less pleading, more resigned. "Mom, I've been thinking about everything you said, about the foundation and the money in our relationship. And I think I'm beginning to understand what you meant about appreciation and gratitude. I think I took for granted how much you were doing for us, and I focused so much on maintaining my independence that I forgot to acknowledge your generosity." "I appreciate you saying that, Emma. I've also been thinking about the foundation, about the women you're helping, and I realize that what you're doing is probably more important than securing my children's inheritance." The admission surprised me. "What made you come to that conclusion?" "I've been volunteering at Sophie's school, helping with their literacy program. I met some of the mothers there who are struggling financially, working multiple jobs just to keep their kids in a good school district. I started thinking about how much of a difference your foundation could make in lives like theirs. It's making a difference already. The first group of recipients are already implementing their business plans. I know I don't have the right to ask this, but would it be possible for me to volunteer with the foundation? Not to try to influence your decisions about the money, but because I think I'd like to be part of something that meaningful." The request was unexpected and, frankly, suspicious. "Emma, I appreciate the offer, but I think you should focus on building the independent life you wanted." "I know how that sounds. I know you probably think I'm just trying to get back into your good graces, so you'll change your mind about the inheritance. Aren't you? Maybe partially. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still upset about the financial changes. But mostly, I think I want to understand better what drove you to start this foundation. I want to see firsthand what grateful recipients look like, so I can understand what I failed to be." Her honesty was disarming. For the first time since our relationship had deteriorated, Emma sounded genuinely reflective rather than defensive or calculating. "If you're serious about volunteering, you can submit an application like anyone else. The foundation has strict policies about conflicts of interest, and your relationship to me would need to be fully disclosed." "I understand. I'll submit a formal application." 3 months later, Emma began working with the foundation as a volunteer coordinator, helping to organize events and manage communications with recipients. She threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised me, spending weekends at fundraising events and evenings writing grant proposals. Watching her interact with the foundation recipients, I saw a side of Emma I hadn't seen in years. She listened to their stories with genuine interest, celebrated their successes with authentic enthusiasm, and offered support without any hint of condescension or judgment. One evening, after a particularly successful grant ceremony, Emma and I were cleaning up the venue together. "Mom, I owe you an enormous apology." I looked up from the table I was clearing. "For what specifically?" "For not understanding what you were trying to give us all these years. For interpreting your love as control and your generosity as manipulation. For being so focused on my own independence that I forgot to be grateful for everything you made possible. I accept your apology. I also want you to know that I understand why you changed your will. These women, seeing how they respond to opportunity and support, it's made me realize how entitled and ungrateful I was." "You weren't ungrateful, Emma. You were just focused on building your own identity, and you felt like my involvement was interfering with that process. But I should have found a way to communicate that without attacking your character or questioning your motives. I should have recognized that your desire to help came from love, not neediness." We worked in comfortable silence for a while, boxing up decorations and stacking chairs. "Mom, I know it's probably too late, but I want you to know that I'd like our relationship to go back to how it was before. I miss talking to you every day. I miss having you involved in the children's lives. I miss feeling like we're a team instead of adversaries." I considered her words carefully. The Emma who was speaking to me now seemed different from the woman who had called me emotionally needy 6 months earlier. Working with the foundation seemed to have given her perspective on gratitude and appreciation that she had been lacking. I'd like that too, Emma. But I need to know that you understand the difference between involvement and interference, between support and control. I need to know that you won't interpret my love as a burden again. I promise I won't. And if I ever start to feel overwhelmed, I'll talk to you about finding balance instead of attacking your motivations. And I promise to be more aware of when my help might be interfering with your autonomy. I never meant to make you feel controlled or supervised. We hugged for the first time in months, and I felt something in my chest loosen that I hadn't realized was still tight. Mom, what about the foundation? What about the inheritance? The foundation is permanent, Emma. That decision isn't changing. But there's no reason you can't be more involved in how those resources are used. There's no reason Sophie and Oliver can't grow up understanding the importance of helping others, instead of just accumulating wealth for themselves. I think I'd like that better anyway. I think I'd rather they learn about generosity and service than just inherit money they didn't earn. They can learn both. There's value in financial security, but there's greater value in understanding how to use resources responsibly. Emma nodded, tears in her eyes. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand how much you love us. I love you, too, sweetheart, and I'm proud of the woman you're becoming. Our relationship rebuilt slowly over the following year. Emma earned back the trust she had damaged through consistent actions rather than just words. She proved that she understood the difference between appreciation and obligation, between gratitude and dependency. The foundation continued to grow, eventually expanding to serve women across New England. Sophie and Oliver began attending foundation events, learning about the importance of helping others and the responsibility that comes with privilege. Emma never asked me to change my will again. Instead, she worked to ensure that the foundation would continue its mission long after I was gone, building partnerships with other organizations and developing sustainable funding sources. Looking back now, I realize that our crisis was necessary. Emma needed to learn about gratitude, and I needed to learn about setting boundaries. The foundation needed to exist to serve women who truly understood the value of opportunity and support. Most importantly, we both needed to understand that love and generosity aren't the same thing as emotional neediness or manipulation. Sometimes, the people we love most need to learn the difference between support and control, between involvement and interference. Emma learned to appreciate what she had been given. I learned to give in ways that enhanced rather than diminished the recipients. Autonomy. Together, we learned that the best family relationships are built on mutual respect and genuine gratitude rather than obligation and guilt. The Diana Walsh Foundation has now helped over 300 women build better lives for their families. Emma serves as its executive director, bringing the same passion to helping others that she once brought to building her own life. Sophie and Oliver volunteer at foundation events, learning that wealth is a tool for service rather than just personal comfort. And every day I'm reminded that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable ingratitude, even when the ungrateful person is someone you love more than life itself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.